the risks and the legislative change. So here we go. It's not working at all. Oh, awesome. Sorry, girls, I'm going to have to rely on you. So I like this. Really, the project here is just to say what this is about is taking a project that could end in disappointment, but making sure that we move forward and have a really great result with clarity and fairness. So Elise, or whoever's driving. Yep, keep going through. That's all right. Election timetable. So we have some new requirements for the City of Adelaide, which I'll run through a little bit more in a minute, but the highlighted yellow sections relate to the new processes that we need to put in place in and around the election timetable. So from Monday the 1st of June, we will need to start our first of minimum of 3 mail-outs to body corporates and groups. And we need to have those all out by the 12th of June at the latest in order to meet our statutory requirements. The close of roll for the entire state is the 31st of July. And then from the 3rd of August, the City of Adelaide will need to issue default nominee notices to body corporates and groups. And we have until the 14th of August to send all of those out. And then the body corporates and groups will have until the 21st of August to respond to us if they don't agree with the notice we've sent, and that will make more sense in a minute. Nominations for candidates open on the 25th of August, and our voters' roll will be finalised on the 28th of August and provided to the Electoral Commission then. So we actually finalise our voters' roll after the opening of those candidate nominations. The rest of the state, their voters' roll has to be provided to EXA by the 21st of August. We have an extra week simply because of all of the other requirements that we're required to meet. And then the balance of that timeline is as per, I suppose, a normal general election and applies to all councils across the state. Next one. So just some quick election facts for you. Voting is voluntary in council elections, unlike state and federal elections. For the City of Adelaide, we have our own Act, and that has some additional requirements in it in and around elections. So they are somewhat different to those in the Local Government Act, but equally need to be read together. We produce a voters' roll. Now, the voters' roll is made up of the council roll and the State House of Assembly roll, which is managed by the Electoral Commission, and the CEO is responsible for combining those two rolls and producing and certifying the voters' roll as correct. As of the 1st of January this year, State Parliament has made a decision to change who can vote in local government elections, and from the 1st of January this year, you must be an Australian citizen and you must be on the House of Assembly roll. So that means you need to be living in South Australia in order to vote in council elections in South Australia. So anybody who's interstate or resides interstate or overseas will no longer be eligible. So with the council roll, the electors are eligible based on their relationship with the property as either owners or occupiers, and therefore their voting rights are not personal or civic. So we're a little bit different in the way we manage our occupier rateable property entitlement. With the additional changes to the City of Adelaide Act that went through Parliament back in 2021 but commenced on the 1st of January this year relate to body corporates and group owners, and they must now nominate a natural person to vote on their behalf. With a body corporate, that natural person must be an officer of the body corporate. An officer is a director, secretary, public officer if it's an association, or somebody who has significant financial or management oversight of the body corporate. So it's quite a restricted entitlement, and that first letter that we send out on the 1st of June will be seeking those nominations from the body corporates and the groups. If they don't make a nomination, and they have until the 31st of July to make that nomination, and we'll be sending obviously reminder letters during that time, the CEO must appoint a default nominee to vote on that body corporate or group's behalf. That becomes complicated insofar as the data that we hold. Historically, we haven't needed to know who the officer of a body corporate is, for example. The way the legislation is written, it makes an assumption that the CEO knows exactly who the officers of the body corporate are or who the members of that group are. So it's very much an issue or a matter of engaging with these groups and getting them to nominate, but we are obtaining additional third-party data to assist us with the knowledge that the CEO apparently already holds. Elise, if you could do the next one, thank you. So I'll just delve into this a little bit more. So we've got our expanded statutory accountability through those amendments, including what really is automatic enrolment requirements. So whilst you're not obligated to enrol, you're not obligated to vote, we're obligated to know who you are and to have you listed on the voters' roll in order for the CEO to make that default nomination. So it is somewhat automatic in its look and feel. We have, and just I think just to discuss there that the eligibility rules are very, very complex, given we've got wards, area and the Lord Mayoral vote. What that looks like from the perspective of body corporate or a group is proving to be quite difficult from a business rules IT solution aspect, and so we've got quite a few people working on that for us. To ensure that we've got visibility over those business rules, to make sure that when the CEO is asked to certify that role, we can put our hands on our hearts and say we've got an audible trail, and we have made sure that the people that are on this role are the correct people, and that you can have confidence in signing this off as true and correct. Cross-agency dependency is also another big risk for us. We are now reliant on EXA and our coordination with them to check the House of Assembly role validation. So every time we have somebody nominated, or we have the information as to the officers that are listed, say with ASIC for a body corporate, we will need to validate them with EXA to say that they are on the state House of Assembly role. And so that is obviously the shared delivery and reputational risk that comes with that is something that we're managing. EXA have indicated that they may share the whole state role with City of Adelaide and City of Adelaide only, where the only council that probably needs to have that in order to make that an easier process, thank you, to manage. And yeah, so hopefully we'll have that access moving forward.
Can I just ask a question, just in relation to the Electoral Commission? Are they geared up? Do they understand the level of risk, their responsibilities? Have you got good relationships with them?
Yeah, they have a person who is dedicated to local government elections, and she's excellent. She's very much across this. We've also met with the Commissioner on a number of occasions, so he's aware of the additional risks and requirements that the City of Adelaide needs to meet and their role within that. And they are working on their own IT solution, because obviously for the state as a whole, trying to do these checks and balances against the House of Assembly role is going to be quite significant for the Commission. I think they're only just starting to turn their minds to it properly now that the state election's over. So again, we've got these compressed timelines not only for City of Adelaide but for the Electoral Commission, which adds further risk to us, which takes us into the next dot point. And those are the hard statutory deadlines that we've got. So that's the engagement, getting those nominations back. And if we don't have those nominations back, a very, very tight time frame in which we can have the voters roll checked by EXA and then those letters and default nominee process within 2 weeks. And noting that we'll be relying on Australia Post as well, and that time frame blows out somewhat. Entitlement complexity again, we've said 10 enrolment scenarios here. I think we're certainly probably up to close on somewhere between 15 and 20. Every time we think of somebody else's different circumstances, it becomes a little bit more complicated. So defining that nominee, making sure that we know who the officers are, who the members of groups are, and how their eligibility flows through from that is something that has taken time for us to get our heads around, but we've got a very good team on board now working through those business rules to ensure that our IT solution meets those, and we're very much in contact with our legal advisors to ensure that we are making sure that those entitlements and the business rules that we're developing are correct. Next one, please. So just certification evidence required, again, auditable and defensible evidence, so that the CEO can have confidence that the role integrity is there and that we have met the requirements of the legislation before he signs off. System transparency constraints, so we use an IT solution called Pathway. We're working very, very closely with the owners of Pathway to completely redefine how the eligibility scope and workflows work within that solution, to ensure that that eligibility is recognised properly and applied properly in the voters' roll, so that if people are not on the state House of Assembly roll or are already registered within the ward because they may live in that ward, that is all taken into account, and that complexity is managed from a business rule IT solution perspective. Again, we've got a business analyst on board who's working through that with the consultant from Pathway, and we've had significant legal advice to check off on all of those Pathway eligibility rules.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
I just want to ask, in relation to that certification process, because it seems quite complex as to what the council needs to do, is there a verification after, so let's say that the CEO's done a nomination, is there a verification process after that to say X has been nominated, to confirm that afterwards, and if it's wrong, an ability for the council to amend that afterwards?
So what we're doing is we're building the voters' roll now, and we'll be inputting the data in regards to who public officers are. So we'll get that data from ASIC and we'll put that in against that particular body corporate, and we'll be testing that with EXA before we go forward to the next stage, so that we've actually ticked off that they are able to vote. If they're not able to vote, then they'll be marked as unable to vote within the system.
Just the situation where you've got the same person nominated multiple times across multiple businesses, how you know, the time to go back to that organisation and say which one.
Yeah.
How does that fit?
Yeah, it's going to be very. I'll be quite honest. It will be difficult. So, if you're nominated as for the group or for the body corporate, a body corporate can only nominate one natural person. So that natural person will apply for all of those properties. across all wards. You only get one vote per ward. So we'll have that information. If they're nominated for 2 body corporates, that will mean that they're only entitled to 1 vote. And we'll be putting out information to the body corporates and the groups to explain that that's the outcome if you're nominated for more than 1 body corporate, so that they understand that that's the effect.
But I'm more interested in, I suppose, then they still want that extra vote for that extra property, etc. They may want to nominate someone different to get the extra vote. Have we built in enough time to actually have that toing and froing?
We hope so, as long as they come back to us early. So we will have the first round of letters out by the 1st of June. If we find that we've got double nominees, then we'll go back to the company at that point in time and say this person's already nominated, we've got to double up, and we're building through an elections team that will be able to do that. And then once it gets to the 31st of July and that voters' roll's closed and we move to the CEO nomination point, the only people that the CEO will be able to nominate are people that are not already nominated, so the double up won't be an issue there. The body corporates can still come back and say, no, we don't want that person, we want somebody else, at which point we'll probably only have about a week in order to turn that around. So they are incredibly tight legislative timeframes for us to work within. So again, this comes down to the IT solution. So the vendor modules are configured by an external group, but they are, so they do limit that rapid internal remediation capacity. But we are working very closely with the owner of Pathway. We have their consultant in 3 days a week working from City of Adelaide and working with our data team to make sure that we get this in place and correct in the tight time frame that we've got to work within. So they've been very good to work with to date. So it's looking positive. Next one, Elise. So this goes over a little bit of what we've already talked about, but just important from, I think, the risk perspective. So again, that state elector validation requirement, the complexity of the eligibility rules. This does create some scope creep for us. The addition of being a state elector has added some additional complexities later in the project, so we're managing that, and it's just increased the level of change and business rule complexity, as I said. Increased external data reliance, so third-party data sets. We have got access to ASIC now, the Land Services SA data as well, ABR data, so that's all coming into what we call our data lake, and our IT team are looking at that data at the moment. We're just waiting on Consumer and Business Services to provide their data. That's primarily for associations and public officer of an association that we require that. And so we are then working through how we build that information and back into our Pathway IT system in regards to public officer information and names. Statutory deadline, again, 1st of June is our deadline for initial letters, and just ensuring that we have a minimum viable product that can produce and digest the information that we've got and produce the extracts. So it's quite transformational, the IT system work that we're doing, and it really does, it's quite a departure from the solution that we've had to date. So it's a lot of work in and around that piece of the project. Next one, please. So with the complexity, obviously increased inquiries and increased, I suppose, questions in and around people's eligibility and what the rules are. We've also, making sure that internally we understand what those rules are, because, as I said, they are quite a departure from where we've been previously. So we've recognised that, and we're building an election support team. So historically, election questions have come through to our customer service centre. Given the nature of these changes, we didn't feel that that was an appropriate tool. And from a business as usual perspective, we want them to focus on that. And so we're building a support team that will handle all of those inquiries, whether they're phone calls, emails, managing any of the written correspondence, follow-up, data entry. So that team will manage all of the election areas, and they'll be trained to understand the nuances of the election legislation as it now stands and what we're doing. So that team's being built out at the moment. Reputational sensitivity is another risk. So there is a level of disenfranchisement or ineligibility as a result of being a state elector. So managing any questions or any reputational risk around that. So again, it's ensuring that we've got that capability and resourcing uplift, making sure that we've got defensible advice and that we're consistent. So having that one election support team in order to do that is key. At the moment, we've got a project manager in place who has an IT background and has been rolling out a number of IT solutions within the organisation. So she's very well versed and capable. Got a business analyst, data architect. The original three of the project, which is Catherine, myself and my manager of the project management office. So we're still very much involved and across the working group. So we've got the main working group which meets weekly. We've got an IT data working group, and we have a marketing and comms group as well, and we've got a number of external consultants in place, including the pathway consultant. We have, thank you, an engagement. We've got a PR strategic communications consultant who's working with our comms and marketing, media and customer service teams. And we also have had, since last year, an external consultant working on this project who worked on a very similar project for the City of Melbourne when they had similar legislation to deal with. So these are just some of the engagement pieces that we have. We will be working very closely with our marketing team and our external person. We have on the 11th of May an industry sector briefing that the Lord Mayor will host. That's primarily for commercial property owners, businesses, traders, associations such as the AHA, Master Builders, Property Council, so that they'll be invited along. We'll make sure that we've got sector-specific collateral, including videos, newsletter articles, social media tools, so that they can be rolled out across those sectors to help build that awareness and engagement with them, because we know that elections are not always that sexy for people. We need people to engage. We need them to engage early and to provide those nominations, which is something we haven't required before. So it's really important that we have that information and we have those associations and sector groups on board. Elise, you'll see here we've got a number of voter profiles. That's just for your information. I won't go through those unless you really want to hear about them, but I think I'll take those as read. So we'll just go through those. You'll see that we've got the voter journey mapping that we've been doing so that we can understand our touch points and what we need to actually be sort of focusing on through that mapping. Go next one, and next one is resourcing. So we've done a gap analysis and an understanding of the resources internally that we have, acknowledging that we need to try and deliver this and business as usual at the same time. So understanding where we needed to bring in that external assistance, which I've spoken about. So project manager, business analyst. This just shows where they would normally sit within an organisation. If we go to the next slide, this is what the actual working group looks like. So we've got a number of streams, whether it's governance, voters' roll, IT, communications, customer experience, and what we call there is democracy advocates. We've actually changed that to election advocates, and how that sort of flows down. So Anthony is sort of the main lead on the project. Under that is myself, then I've got my project management team and my project manager, and then our individual streams that flow from that, and making sure that we've got a mixture there of internal and external people where we've needed to bring them on. The external people are there in the green writing and the white boxes. I think, final slide is just the budget. Obviously the budget is, given the significant changes that we are managing here, we've had to bring on additional staff to manage those IT solutions. There's costs in regards to updates to the IT, significantly increased engagement across the process, and that engagement commences early because we are actually the call to actions to enrol your nominee. Normally we would probably be starting with enrol to vote, sort of to as a more general approach, but this is a real call to action, so we've had to broaden that out. The external data arrangements with ASIC and the like come with an additional cost. So you can see there that we've split that over this financial year and next financial year, with the total budget at the moment coming in at 1.75 essentially.
Can I just ask a question in relation to the budget? Are the changes that you've needed to make this year because it's the first year? I'm assuming next time this happens, some of the things that you're putting in place now will be in place and you won't have to do it. Is that budget increase a forever increase, or is there some potential that actually may reduce purely because of what you now understand and what you put in place from an IT, etc. perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So once the IT solution's in place, that will obviously continue, noting that we will potentially have supplementary elections over the 4 years following the general election. So and the data arrangements will continue so that we can keep that information updated on a consistent basis. Part of the project that we've got in place is that once we've finished with this election is actually setting ourselves up for success moving forward and understanding what those governance arrangements are. So we're having those conversations now and they're being noted down, but that will be the final piece of the project itself. And having said that, we will need to, as elections come around, reach out to people in order to get those nominations from them. It is a legislative requirement, so for the general election come June every year, there is a requirement for us to contact those body corporates and groups. My hope is that through this first process we get a lot more email addresses so that we don't need to do that as bulk mail outs, that there'll be a more digitised process moving forward, which will save on cost, because obviously a lot of these costs do relate to mail outs.
Sorry, through the chair, as Beck has alluded to, the data is probably the key component of this, and we're going to ensure that we have processes in place to maintain that data as well as we can. so that when we get to that point where we have to identify people, it's much easier than it is this time around.
That's the end. Thank you.
Opening it up for questions. I'm happy to start if you like. I'm assuming that following the process and the elections, we'll have some type of, learnings, post-implementation review, things that we can, do better in future. I suppose as a committee, you've gone through to give us some comfort that things are being risk managed, but there still is some degree of risk out there, judgments that the CE has to miraculously make, reputational risk and the like from that. How are you kind of managing when a complaint comes?
From the complaints perspective, any complaints will come through via our normal complaints policy. So that's how that will be managed, I suppose, on a day-by-day basis. But having the elections team there and having them specifically trained to manage any inquiries will mitigate a lot of those complaints, and the answers will be available to them in a consistent manner. So I would hope that we can mitigate as much as we can, but I mean, there's always be a level of risk.
Documentation and having evidence is going to be critical to actually defend the decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. And the IT solution's been built so that we can keep notes in there, so that if we speak to somebody, when we send letters to them, why we've made certain decisions as to whether or not they're eligible or not. So it will be entirely auditable, so that we can produce that audit trail if we're ever required to.
Through the chair, for the recent Central Board by-election, we did get some queries around eligibility and who was and wasn't, and the key was understanding the rules of eligibility, and so we'll be very clear within our own internal staff, but also as much information as we can, I guess, disseminate to prospective voters what those eligibility rules are.
There's a fair bit of reliance on post and the like. Your backup plans as far as your website, your other... What's your backup plan? Because for someone saying, I didn't get it in the post, I haven't responded.
So from an engagement and marketing communications perspective, with the website's live at the moment with just sort of a holding statement. We're building what we're calling an election navigator. So there'll be QR codes that people can go into that website and then go through the navigator to work out what their voting entitlement will be. So that's fairly well developed. We're just testing that at the moment. We're working through the messaging and the collateral that will go on the website for people, the FAQs, so that they've got a lot of information at that front end. And that QR code will be provided via the sector-specific marketing and engagement collateral that will go out as part of the campaign. And we're also looking at videos with a couple of well-known identities around the city of Adelaide, in order to try and get some additional sort of engagement with people and recognition and call to action from them, which we hope will actually assist in driving that traffic to the website. On the website, we also have the 3 nomination forms that we've developed and had signed off by the Electoral Commission, so that people can very easily jump online and make their nomination through that means, as well as providing a hard copy if they require that. From the perspective of traders, such as those at ACMA, We've already met with their traders group as well, but we'll be down there speaking to them further and making sure that they've got a box or something similar to put their nominations in, to make it as simple as we can for them to get that information back to us and ask any questions as well.
Through the chair, what Becca's just described is our communication strategy, whereas in the past it's been largely a marketing campaign, but this is more a proactive call to arms for as many people as we can reach.
Any further questions? No? I assume we are being asked to note the... What? We don't have to. No? But, okay. Well, we're happy to note your presentation. And thank you very much for the thorough way that you're attacking this challenging area. Our next item is 6.2, the draft business plan and budget. Anthony, over to you.
Thank you. We've got Mitch and Nicole here to assist with me. Now, Mitch, you've been introduced to the committee. Okay, thank you. Thanks, please. So this is really, I guess, an update as to where we're at in the development of the current business plan and budget. You see our roadmap there. That has changed probably quite significantly from one that you would have seen earlier. To be fair, I think usually there's, I guess, more intensity around getting our operational budget in place. It's kind of been a bit flipped this year in terms of our operational budget has been a little bit easier to work with because we've had such a strong long-term financial plan that sets our high-level parameters. Where some of the challenge has been this year, and you'll see in a couple of those sessions that we've had and got coming up, is around our capital program, and that's largely around the main streets delivery. And you can see there's a conglomeration of meetings and special meetings there that's compressing the timeline to ensure that we can still get out to public consultation in an appropriate time to allow that 21-day statutory timeframe, and then allow us to also be able to adopt the business plan and budget prior to the end of June. Thanks. The journey to date, like I said, the operating budget has been much easier to communicate with and work with the council this year. We held a significant workshop where we went through every program that we have, delved down into the business as usual for each of those, and then also looked at the operating activities that occur with that. And what our operating activities are, they are, I guess, initiatives that happen year on year, which is where much of our discretionary expenditure sits. We've had, again, just reiterating, the capital budget has been quite intense this year in terms of understanding where we go with that, and in particular that's because, and we'll touch on it a little bit later, that there are significant commitments already in place in terms of the main streets and other projects that we have. And you'll recall, as part of the ASCOSA feedback around our financial cushion, we do have about $23 million in our long-term plan, which is uncommitted at this point in time. And there's been quite a bit of conversation around the wisdom of using that or not to fund any new additional new and upgrade projects. Thanks, Elise. Where we started from the 7th of February briefing, that was around our programs. The key, I guess, underlying assumptions there was that we had a CPI forecast at that point in time from SACES of about 2.5% for the coming year. We'll touch a little bit on that as we get towards the end of the presentation. And based on the existing assumptions within the long-term financial plan, that effectively derived a general rates revenue increase of about 5.1%, which is made up from a base of CPI of 2.5%. We're in the third year of 3 years of our asset renewal repair fund, so we needed to use some borrowings on a short-term basis to fund the gap between our revised asset management plans and what we had in the long-term financial plan. So that'll be the last year we see the requirement for the 2.1%, but we also still have that 0.5% in there, which is transitioning us to 100% asset renewal funding ratio over 8 years. We have traditionally assumed about a 1% growth in rates, but the actual evidence from the past couple of years has suggested that that's highly conservative, and so we're using 1.5% at the moment, but again, I think you'll find over the last couple of years it's been higher than that as well. Interest rates for borrowings, back at that point in time, we were assuming 5.1%. That has moved a little bit since then as well. And naturally we can have some significant depreciation impacts from revaluation of our assets, noting that we do the desktop revaluations in the periods where we haven't gone out and got full-blown external valuations. Effectively, when we look at the targeted operating position to ensure that we can fund or service our debt and fund some of the commitments through some of the council decisions, particularly around 1.5% for the upgrade of new and upgrade component of our community parklands buildings. We determined that we needed an operating surplus of about $5.3 million. When we extrapolated out our original draft-based budget, it came out to $7.3 million, which gave us about $2 million to incorporate additional service changes or additional strategic projects that weren't part of our $7.4 million that we had embedded. When we've worked through with the organisation about some of the challenges and opportunities that we had, we needed about $2.8 million to do so, which gave us a shortfall of 824 in terms of our target. And that then formed the basis of subsequent workshops and internal processes to identify how we could fund that.
Through the presiding member, can I assure the committee that following the all-day workshop with the council members on the 7th of February, where we unpacked the operating budget, provided advice around service changes and projects, we took the feedback from that session and we effectively balanced the budget. So we found $824,000 of adjustments to bring the draft budget back to the target of 5.283. So the gap, that was a gap at a point in time. When that's what we're working with when we unpacked the budget with council members on the 7th of February. Subsequently, we identified projects that could be retimed and we were able to bring the draft operating budget back to target.
Next slide, thanks. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah, just the service changes, which is 3.4 million. Is that is that sort of is that just a couple of major sort of service changes, or is it sort of across the whole services? Just sort of interesting. Yeah, it's quite a large number. Yeah, it was a range of different service changes that were identified. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, but I think there's 742,000 there for AEDA as part of the 3.4, which we'll touch on. But you can also see that rates revenue has been increased by 742, which is 0.5% of that growth, which we're using to fund that increase in AEDA. So that's a net, I guess, a net sort of net gain, net zero gain. And we also have identified, given our approach to expiations and parking these days, we needed additional resourcing to do that. We can also see that that's been partially offset by fees and charges increases as well as a result of that initiative. So they're probably the two largest changes from the top of my memory that made up those, and then there's a range of other
things. I'm not sure if you've got the list in front of you there, Nicole. Yeah.
Through the presiding member, outside of the AIDA adjustment, which was an adjustment to revenue and an adjustment to appropriation, there was about a dozen adjustments to service changes across the organisation. A number of those were related to service improvements and the implementation of strategic priorities. But we can provide the list of service changes as part of the minutes of the meeting, I think.
This next slide really is just a distillation of some of the movement in our capital program related back to the long-term financial plan that had been adopted back in November. We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but effectively, there has been some significant movements in terms of delays, largely associated with the Main Streets delivery program. I'm not sure if there's any questions on that, but we will drill down into that in subsequent slides.
I think the key message of this slide, through the presiding member, as at the end of Q2, current financial year, we had commitments of 52 million in terms of new and upgrade projects. Progressing those projects, particularly the Main Street projects, so the 5 Main Street projects, would require an ongoing allocation of funding in the order of 23 million, 24 million in 26-27, 30 million in 27-28, and a further 32 in 28-29. Now, that's the key message that we delivered to the council members on the 21st of February. Essentially, it was a sobering message around, based on your existing commitments, if you're going to flow through on those, you're pretty much capped out. In terms of additional new and upgrade projects, noting that those commitments go well into the next council term, and while we did not recommend committing the financial cushion of 24 million, it leaves a relatively modest capital spend over 29-30 through to 30-35.
So just a question on that one as well. The deferment of that as well, has that factored in then the increased cost potentially in those rates as well, or are they in today's dollars?
They're in
Today's. Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Michael. I did have that circled and I skipped over it, so thank you. So in terms of the discussions that we have had with council to date, I've sort of touched on before that we went through every program down to activity detail so that council could get a good understanding of the functions across the organisation. And flowing from those were our proposed operating budgets, which I said included those what we call operating activities, which is to some degree more discretionary than some of our other business as usual type expenditure. We talked about the challenges and opportunities facing us for the 26-27 budget, and then looked at the strategic projects and the service changes that would address those challenges and opportunity and capitalise on those opportunities, which is what Mike was referring to. We also talked about the progress of the capital new and upgrade projects and the implications along with that in adopting any additional new and upgrade projects that would eat into the financial cushion. And since then there's been two sessions to date, specifically on the Main Streets revitalisation projects and the timing and impact of those. and we've got another one coming up this Tuesday to get as much indication of where council would like to head with those before we put it to council formally. And then we've also spent some time exploring the increase to the AIDA funding appropriation. That would be the one caveat that I would put on the operating budget at this point in time, is that whilst we have a good feel for where we think council might be on that, we still haven't resolved that yet, and that will form part of us going out for consultation and getting the formal budget adoption at the appropriate times. And most recently, given what has been happening with CPI, there's been a dedicated workshop on that as well. And one of the key things we, I guess, talked about there is that CPI was already on the way up before the fuel crisis hit us. So in late December, early January, early in the year in January and February, we're already looking at a 3.5% CPI in the fork, and most of the external bodies had already started reforecasting higher at that point in time before the fuel crisis. So it's kind of top of mind for us, and we're monitoring that on a regular basis. And if I get a chance later, I'll also talk to some of the initiatives that we've put in place, particularly in our city operations teams, about how we are ensuring that we are being as efficient as we possibly can in terms of our use of fuel at the moment. In terms of,
unless there's any specific questions from members, we have presented a proposal about incrementally increasing the appropriation to AIDA over a 3-year period. That's based on a progressive uplift of about 750,000 per annum, which will increase the allocation by 2.1 over 3 years. That's ultimately a matter for council that needs to be resolved. So,
in terms of, we produce this for council as well, so that they can actually see the allocations towards the different strategies that we have in place. This year, the Central Market Strategic Plan has been allocated significantly more funding than some of the others, noting that we're looking to launch the market in November, so there is a significant requirement there, which council have recognised. Next cab off the rank there, the economic development strategy is also still receiving a significant proportion of funding to allow us to continue to support businesses across the city. Asset management plan is another one that we're recognising the importance of maintaining those asset management plans and delivering on those. There's been an allocation here. I think that was around our condition audits and making sure we've got the best information we have. And the integrated climate strategy, another key strategy that council has in place, has also received about 8.6% of the overall strategic project funding. Next, thanks, Elise. So in terms of, again, I won't reiterate this because I did it, I think, in one of the first 2 slides, some of the underlying assumptions of where we've landed to date to achieve that 5.3 operating position is predicated on a 2.5% CPI component, general rates revenue increase of 5.1 broken down into those, you can see those bullet points there, and growth of new projects. And also embedding those service changes that we have identified and a range of strategic projects that help us deliver on some of our priorities for the coming year. So in terms of the most recent workshop with council around the emerging risk of where inflation is heading and how that may flow on to council and also our ratepayers. We undertook some research around, like I said, the existing CPI prior to fuel increases, both the ABS, the RBA and SACES through their work are all predicting higher CPI for 26-27 than we had assumed in our long-term financial plan back then. Some of the banks, and this is commentary only. I don't think it's supported by anything at this point in time. But in addition to where we are with the current CPI at 3.5% and any flow-on effects through the economy, some banks are predicting potentially up to 5% CPI for 26-27 or the balance of 25-26. So as a result of that, as part of the workshop, we talked to Council about what the impacts of us adopting a 3.5% inflation factor might be, which impacts our rate revenue increases based on the way we build that up. It will also impact some fees and charges, particularly those that are linked to CPI or where there are statutory fees that are imposed upon us by the state, or our other commercial fees and charges where we need to maintain competitive neutrality with the commercial market. So we've looked at where they are particularly impacted, and materials, contracts and other expenses where they are also linked to CPI and built into our contracts. We've identified the line items within our budget that would be impacted by that. However, it's fair to say we haven't increased every line item by 3.5%. So where there's no evidence of linkages to CPI, we've maintained 2.5% increase across those budget line items, and we're expecting the organisation then to find efficiencies to be able to deliver the same level of services within that 2.5% increase envelope rather than a full 3.5%. And later you'll see that gives us an ability to provide an efficiency to mitigate a full rate rise envisaged, encompassing the 1% increase to our inflation factor. We also get hit through depreciation because of our asset renewals, and our asset base are increased by CPI in those interstitial periods where we haven't gone out and got full valuations. So there's significant flow-on effects for large parts of our budget.
Anthony, what's the latest you can sort of hold as far as to have a better indication of where CPI is going to land?
This is I'll speak first and then I'll let Michael add his bit, but this is a conundrum always as well, because we need to go out and consult at some stage, and there's debate. And when I was at Onkaparinga, we adopted a certain CPI, went out and consulted on it, and then we came back and it had changed. And so as part of that final adoption, we increased CPI and received criticism for that. The next year we tried it the other way around, and we went out and we consulted on our CPI, and then we stuck to that, and we got criticised because the CPI was different as well. So it is a conundrum for us. I think the March CPI doesn't come out until late April, which then makes it really difficult for us to incorporate that into the budget to go out for consultation. Sorry, Michael, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, but it's at this point in time we're suggesting we'll go out with 3.5%. That's what we're going to consult on. If there are significant changes after that, it's something I think we'll have to work with council on.
Through the presiding member, I totally support and reinforce everything Mr. Spartalis has said. There are statutory provisions around the timing of a budget. You can't adopt a budget before the 31st of May. You can't adopt it after the 31st of August. The City of Adelaide is a large and complex organisation, and we need to lead on the basis of a level of certainty. It's also important that the revenue streams that come to council through rates and fees and charges are set and cash flowed as soon as possible. We've got an organisation we need to resource, we've got a capital program we need to fund. budgets are about taking a position, and while there is a lot of external commentary about where things may go, every firm indicator in front of us has a 3 in front of it, we will have the benefit of the March CPI within a couple of weeks. That might be, just before we get endorsement to go out to consultation. But we need to take a position. We need to and importantly, we need to balance a budget around that position. Noting that through the provisions of the Local Government Act, we have the opportunity, as the committee is well aware, to review and revise a budget 3 times a year. Now, I suspect that there will be currently unknown external economic factors that will impact on our forward position, and we'll need to take account of that. My position will be whatever cost escalation we're faced with, we need to deal with it, and that may require efficiencies or adjustments to our position. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. The next page, I think, talks about the key assumptions that you have made, which does talk about a CPI indexation of 3.5%, which gives you some surety about where you're potentially heading, which is not inconsistent with what the numbers are showing now. Yeah. So, that makes perfect sense. At some point, you've got to draw the line. Yeah.
And I'd make the point that, and I think Mr. Svarkella's made it, in reviewing the inflation assumption, we're looking at a baseline 3.5, where it directly impacts on our cost base. So, importantly, that will require an assessment of contracts that have a rise and fall element to them. Most of that flows through to the capital program. There are some operating expenses. Quite clearly, there'll be some impact in terms of utility charges, etc. In uplifting the inflation assumption, it's not across the board. We've made a considered assessment of where the external economic impact will be, and we're holding the 2.5 for internal services, and my expectation is that we drive that through efficiencies. Importantly, in terms of the adjustment to rates, I'd point to the top right-hand corner slide. We start with a 3.5% uplift. We adjust it for the asset renewal repair fund and the funding ratio increase, but we're modifying that with an adjustment of 0.5%, so the real underlying rate increase is in fact 3%, not 3.5. So we're conscious of the need to mitigate the impact on ratepayers, and effectively that general rates increase is a net 3%, not 3.5.
I think from my perspective, I don't know, I think you should be commended for the fact that you're not just putting the 3.5 across everything, you're actually doing it in a considered way, which I think, as a ratepayer or the like, I think that is a very fair way to actually approach it.
I think the next couple of slides have been covered, unless there are any specific questions.
To open it up to questions?
Yes, please. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very thorough as always. Opening it up for questions. Any questions?
I was just going to just to understand as well, that 3.5%, that brings you back to, I think it's at 5.2 result, is that correct?
5.1.
5.1.
5.6.
5.6 was it?
No,
sorry.
no, the operating position.
Yes.
5.3.
Yes.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
brings it back in, like, so that brings it back to.
We're maintaining that because that's basically what we've determined to be able to fund, service the debt, fund other initiatives that council have made a decision on.
Yeah, and so I think as well, and going with the chair's comments as well, you've already found savings in round one, as you said before, Michael. We're now trying to find additional ones as well to fit within this. So, yeah, I can see that clearly now from this presentation, the journey you guys have taken to get to this point. So, I think that was really important to factor in. So, it's good to understand.
Next slide. And picking up on that point, we're well into the process, but there are significant steps to go. Super Tuesday next week. We need to get a landing on council's preferred delivery option position. That will enable us then to finalise the capital program. We're presenting a balanced operating budget to committee next Tuesday as well. And that's the administration's recommendation, subject to council member scrutiny and decision. So we've got a little way to go. We are proposing, now it's the 15th of May committee meeting, is that it?
Oh, we're looking at alternate dates at the
Right, okay. So, but regardless, we will be back to the Audit and Risk Committee in May, at a May meeting, to provide further advice about our progress on the finalisation of both the operating budget and the capital budget.
If I can, just to follow up as well, just for more for information, the challenges and the changes that are happening as part of this process, on Council's long-term financial plan, when's the anticipated, say, next update?
Following the adoption of the budget. So
That's happening then?
as soon as we've locked in the 6-7 budget, the update of the long-term financial plan will be got.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, committee, we're being asked to note the update on the development of the draft 2026-27 business plan as presented at 6.2. From an advice perspective, I think we don't particularly have any advice, although I feel that we should actually commend management on the fact that the potential 3.5% increase is not applied across the board. It's actually being done in a measured, you can find the right words, in a measured way that actually is fairer from a cost absorption and an increase perspective. So I'll leave you to find some words in that space, but on that basis, are we happy to note that? And if yes, may I have a mover? Thank you, Mark, and seconded John. All in favour? Motion carried. Thank you. At 7.1, we have our own self-assessment results, pretty much self-explanatory. There is some commentary about member training opportunities that you will reach out in the future to ask if we're interested in undertaking. Essentially, any comments that anyone wants to make in relation to the survey results? Are we happy to note the survey results? Okay. May I have a mover? Thank you, John, and seconded Mark. All in favour? Motion carried. Thank you. At 7.2, we have our annual terms of reference review. Anything that anyone wants to raise in relation to this? Also fairly standard.
Yeah, through the chair, that's consistent with what we were thinking.
Okay. Okay, excellent. On that basis, we're being asked to adopt the terms of reference and authorise the CE to make any type of typographical amendments as required.
It's actually a recommendation that you're recommending to council that.
Okay, right.
Yes.
Based on that, we recommend to council that council adopts and authorises. May I have a mover, please? Thank you, Mark, and seconded. Thank you, John. All in favour? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 8 relates to key emerging risks. I think we've probably covered those in relation to cost pressures and CPI, fuel as well, and the like. Is there anything else from an emerging risk perspective that anyone wants to raise? No? Okay. Yes, and we should probably add on that list election challenges. Any independent member discussion that is required? Any other business before I move to exclude the public? No? Okay. Item 11 relates to the exclusion of the public. I'm not going to read it out. There's 2 resolutions there. May I have a mover? Thank you, John, and a seconder. Thank you, Mark. All in favour? Thank you. May we exclude the public? And stop the recording.